Taegun, the nation's top esper. A man so powerful, so untouchable, he's considered an immovable object. But behind that reputation lies a truth no one dares to speak of. Power comes at a cost. Like every esper, Taegun suffers from the side effects of his own strength. But unlike others, he refuses the one thing that could help him, a guide. He's stubborn, resistant, and absolutely unwilling to accept assistance until Seo Unsung enters the picture. Unsung isn't just any guide, he's one of the greatest alive. And he's not about to let Taegun destroy himself with his refusal to listen. No matter how impossible it seems, Unsung is determined to be the one who breaks past Taegun's walls. Before Seo Eunsung's arrival changed everything, Taegun's life was a cycle of battles, exhaustion, and moments of fleeting peace. Even the nation's strongest esper had his limit. Taegun blinked awake, the dim overhead lights of the conference room casting sterile shadows across the polished wooden table. His head felt heavy, the lingering effects of exhaustion pooling behind his eyes. The familiar voice of a co-worker broke through the haze. "Finally wake up," he said, and a snicker followed. The great Taegun passed out in the conference room. "You're becoming a nuisance to the other guide members." Taegun groaned, rubbing the bridge of his nose as he pushed himself upright. He dozed off, he admitted, his voice raspier than usual. The hallway outside was bustling. Guild members moved in coordinated strides, voices weaving into a constant hum. As Taegun stepped out, murmurs followed. Excitement sparked among the members at his presence. Some pulled out their phones, eager to snap a picture. One member whispered that he really is as impressive in person. Fan approached hesitantly and said that she was a huge fan and would like to take a picture with him. Taegun exhaled softly, but mustered a tired smile, agreed to a fan, easing into the familiarity of public interaction. He posed, signed a few autographs, and exchanged light pleasantries before moving forward. His co-worker matched his pace, eyeing him carefully. Concern lingered in every glance. He looked pale, paler than usual. Taegun dismissed it flatly. He'd taken sedatives, and that was enough. His co-worker sighed, saying that he should take better care of himself. Because everyone looks up to him, and add that there's no other esper like him in the country. Taegun's expression stiffened. He knew that was true. His life had been bleak before awakening as an esper. No family. No real friends. Just drifting through mediocrity. Until one day, power surged through him, and everything changed. He became the top-ranked player in the country, his abilities unmatched. Espers, the wielders of supernatural energy, roamed the world, venturing into dungeons to fight. But their power came with a fatal flaw: they lacked the ability to stabilize themselves. Sedatives helped, but true stability required a guide. And Taegun had no intention of getting one. So when his coworker said there was someone new, someone different, his guard snapped up. Of course it was a guide. Taegun's stomach churned. He remembered the worst of them, the ones with unsettling eyes, with inappropriate suggestions, with whispered promises that made his skin crawl. He warned his coworker through clenched teeth. If this was another freak, another person with quirks, he'd walk out. His coworker chuckled and said that he don't have to worry, that this guide is reliable. Taegun shot him a skeptical glare that if this is like last time when someone asked him to lick their feet, he swear. No, absolutely not. His coworker shook his head vigorously. Taegun narrowed his eyes. And what if this one has some weird fetish? And what if he touches him in a way that's annoying? Guides stabilize espers through physical contact, his coworker explained patiently. That's their job. Taegun muttered something under his breath, but let the conversation drop. He followed into a meeting room, his steps unhurried but weighted with irritation. He had no intention of relying on a guide. The door opened, and he stopped cold. Inside stood someone unexpected. Sio Unsung. He wasn't what Taegun anticipated. No fanfare, no theatrics. Just stillness. Composure. A quiet kind of presence that felt grounding. The room itself seemed to fall into rhythm with him. Their eyes locked. No words passed between them. None were needed. In that silence, something shifted. A pull, strange and steady, threaded between them, not physical, not even emotional. Something deeper. Unsung thought to himself that they had finally met. His face was surprisingly the same as it had been when he was younger, which made Unsung feel a bit uncomfortable. However, since this was his job, he didn't have a choice. Seo Unsung introduced himself and extended his hand for a handshake, but Taegun only stared at Unsung's hand, stopping himself from reciprocating. Instead, he simply introduced himself and remarked that Unsung must be popular among the new recruits, given that he was an S-class guide with extraordinary skills. Unsung merely responded, "Is that so?" However, Taegun apologized, saying that he had come all the way to the office just to make it clear that he had no intention of having a guide. His co-worker had expected him to say that. Taegun wondered if he was being too straightforward, but he couldn't help it. His instincts told him that Unsung couldn't be his guide. Despite having just met him, Taegun felt strange. He had the strongest urge to hold Unsung's hand, yet he was trying his best to resist. His feet hesitated to move forward, as if warning him that a guide like Unsung was dangerous. Taegun felt ashamed of himself, thinking that he should leave immediately, as his mind was going blank. Unsung insisted that Taegun sit down for a chat, saying he had a special gift for him. Taegun hesitated, refusing, and thought to himself, "Don't come any closer." He felt as if he were being held down by his ankles. While Taegun was lost in thought, he didn't realize that Unsung had placed a bracelet on his wrist. Shocked, he demanded, "What the hell did you do? What is this bracelet for?" Unsung simply smiled, understanding why Taegun was angry, and told him to calm down. He explained that he had heard Taegun didn't want to be guided. Even though Unsung was one of the best guides, he figured Taegun would be more high maintenance than he could normally handle. That was why he had prepared this bracelet. It contained Unsung's power, allowing it to flow into Taegun with a weak guiding effect that would help him. But Taegun couldn't believe the bracelet had only a weak effect on him. He refused to accept it, feeling the overwhelming strength of its power, which made him feel weak. Standing his ground, Taegun forcefully attempted to remove the jewelry. His coworker warned him, "You won't be able to take it off by force. It will eventually fall off once your health fully recovers." Frustrated, Taegun continued trying to remove it. His coworker added, "Try not to be too pissed off. Honestly, everyone is probably jealous of you. Commander Seo Unsung has a truckload of admirers, even from abroad. He's someone who's always greeted with gratitude, even if he's slapped in the face." Unsung told Taegun that he had seen the results of his medical examination, and they were a complete mess. He explained that he couldn't work with someone whose health was in such poor shape and remarked that, even though Taegun was no ordinary Esper, he seemed to be holding up for now. Taegun cut him off, using his Esper abilities. Unsung was shocked. He had never seen an Esper reject him at such a close distance before. He realized it would take a lot of practice, and that the job wouldn't be easy. Unsung also noted that Taegun's coworker seemed to be the only one excited about the situation. Finally, Unsung explained that the bracelet had been specially prepared for Taegun by a guide. It was custom-made and had been approved by the guide leader, insisting that Taegun continue wearing it. Then, when Unsung left, Taegun suddenly felt weak, his body reacting to the bracelet's guidance. For the 25th time, Taegun said, "No, this is not happening." Determined, he headed to the guide leader's office to have the bracelet removed. He then turned to his coworker and asked, "Do you really think you were allowed to make a decision like that without my consent?" However, if the coworker hadn't acted without informing Taegun, he would never have accepted the guidance. He was far too stubborn. The coworker, feeling nervous about the weight of the decision he had made, explained that the guide leader had taken a leave of absence out of concern for Taegun. As they walked, an employee happened to pass by, briefly glancing in their direction. At first, she simply wondered where they were headed, but then her eyes landed on Taegun's wrist, and she froze. Taegun was wearing a guide's bracelet. Shock rippled through her as she quickly pulled out her phone, hastily typing a message in the company chat. Taegun is wearing a guide's bracelet. Within moments, the message spread like wildfire. reaching employees throughout the building. The air shifted as reactions poured in, whispers, hurried glances, and exchanged looks of disbelief. The revelation swept through the workplace, stunning everyone who read the news.